And I want to very sincerely thank you all for appearing before the committee today. I'm very conscious that I know it's been a gruelling time for you all. It's obviously been a gruelling time for everybody in RT, and particularly for those who are, I suppose, very modestly paid and in insecure contracts. But I'm conscious that, you know, this whole experience is taking a toll on everybody, but we're here because obviously we all want a stronger and better RT at the end of this process. So my first question is to Mr. Lynch with regards to that letter of guarantee to Mr. Tubridy in 2020. You have knowledge of that letter, and then 7 months later there was pay cuts being proposed by the RT executive to the staff. Did you not think then you should have raised that issue, that there was a guarantee of no reduction for a 5-year period to Mr. Tubridy, and yet staff were being asked to take pay cuts of the order of 3 to 5% or 3 to 6%?
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally accept that. I would also say, as I said last week, that all of these talent contracts in the round should come to the executive board, so there's total transparency around them. Okay.
Yeah. And is there a letter of guarantee of no pay cuts to anybody else that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. What's the update on Mr. Tubridy's contract at this point in time? Like, as in, we've heard that he's out of written contract and that there's a verbal contract. So where are things at now?
Yeah, so right now, Mr. Tubridy finished because his contract, as you'll see by the one that was supplied, is one for television and radio services. Once he had stepped back from the Late Late Show, that contract expired at the end of May. We were in the process.
The written contract expired at the end of May.
We are in the process of renegotiating a new contract for radio. Yeah, those negotiations have been suspended for the moment.
But a verbal contract is a contract nonetheless, is it not? Particularly when a person has been with an organisation for a period of time. I'm not a lawyer, but this
Correct.
is what I'm given to understand. So yeah. He is in contract at the moment?
Correct.
Okay. And nothing has been done to change that over the past week?
Correct.
Okay. With regards to the allowances, and thank you for furnishing that, and I suppose what I find particularly interesting is the column which details the pay of the top 100. And what I find particularly interesting is, I suppose, the column detailing the allowances. So we're seeing in the main that there is allowances of the order of 24,000 to 42,000 for one individual. What are those allowances about? And I see one manager has no allowances at all. So, but is every allowance paid directly by RTE? Are there are some payments part of a commercial deal? So how are they managed?
Yeah. So
and what are they for?
Yeah. The only allowance I'm aware of is the car allowance that I receive. I can say that there is no commercial partnership deal or otherwise in any of those. They are paid by RTE.
So there's no sponsorship element to any of those allowances?
Absolutely not. This is all staff. Yeah.
So the person who's got an allowance of €42,000, is that for a car?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it. Yeah.
Well, I think we need to see that information, the breakdown of allowances, because I have to contrast that between an ongoing process for the majority of staff with regards to travel and subsistence, where they're just trying to get the civil service rates, and those figures are, you know, akin to what some people are actually earning in RT at this point in time.
So Deputy, without obviously going against the advice of the DPO in terms of releasing people's names and so on, if you want to furnish me with any questions regarding any of those particular allowances, we can supply the details to you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to understand. It's to Ms. O'Leary. I want to ask the question now with regards to client hospitality. In any of the trips that were undertaken, or any of the outings, if I could put it like that, were members of the board, was the chair, were presenters wheeled out effectively to meet sponsors? I would assume that would be part and parcel of what you would need to do to try and keep sponsors sweet.
No, I mean, not on any trips. There was a question last week about whether the then head of News and Current Affairs, who was at the Champions League match, had come through barter or commercial. The answer was no, he went personally. So no, we would not normally bring, if we're going on a trip, it's always either a client or an agency. So, for example, when we were at a match in Edinburgh, we may have met up with the commentary team who were already there, because that's good, you know. But we wouldn't pay for them. We wouldn't bring them.
And what about and go on, Mr. Lynch.
I was just going to qualify there in terms of, because I've been through the barter list in detail over the weekend. So the only events I would have attended, for example, are events where the commercial division would be hosting a breakfast for media agencies who buy airtime with us, And as Director of Channels, I would have been explaining the upcoming schedules and so on that they would then buy airtime around. So it's the only event I was involved in.
But no members of the board would ever be asked to attend an event with a commercial sponsor?
I stand to be corrected, Deputy, but not that I can.
And a presenter with whose name is associated, well, if we might call it a top presenter whose programme is effectively sponsored, that there would be no ask of that presenter to other than the Renault events with Mr. Tubridy.
No, the
presenters
rules
were not asked to turn up.
are normally quite strict, and as I said before, the only time I've been across a top talent contract has been this one. But there would be strict rules. They would do a photo call normally, but not if they're from News and Current Affairs. So if we have a new sponsor, they would come into RT and there might be one photo call with the client and the presenter. But that would be it, and there would be no other obligations, including any sponsorship deals that we do.
Okay. I just want to understand a little bit more about again, the relationship between presenters and sponsors, and I take what you've said there, but I think last week it was said that firstly, I suppose I want to ask about your working relationship with Noel Kelly. I think it was said last week that there was advice offered on dealing with sponsors. So can you elaborate more on your working relationship and how frequent contact you would have with Noel Kelly?
From a commercial perspective, I mean, the most intense period of interaction I had with Noel Kelly would have been when the Director General was asking me to find a solution for the payments, which led to the barter account. Normally, I would have very occasional contact with Noel Kelly. I might meet him in RTE, but he also has a business, CMS Marketing, which represents clients, including Bank of Ireland, Vodafone, etc. So every now and again, if there was an issue with something, he might call me on post, but rarely.
Okay, and can I just ask then, perhaps maybe to Mr. Lynch and also to Mr. Collins and Ms. O'Keefe, and I'm very thankful to Ms. O'Keefe for being here, particularly as a former employee, just in terms of the impact of the sponsorship deals on the negotiation of a fee of a contractor, to what extent it determines the overall fee negotiation. Particularly, we know that, let's say, the contract of the presenter is not necessarily always aligned with the sponsorship of a programme. So if new sponsorship comes in, does that, are there renegotiations of the fees? Because I'm asking this question because we've heard time and again, losing Ryan Tubridy was not just about saving the 500,000 thereabouts that he was earning, it was going to be losing the millions that he was bringing in commercial revenue. So to what extent that actually coloured his fees? If you could give me an answer on that, please. And any of the presenters with whom there is a commercial sponsorship deal on their programme.
Yeah, that is the only one that I'm aware of. So I would be aware of, from an editorial conflict point of view, with other talent, some of whom represent themselves, some of whom are represented by Noel Kelly. And it's the editorial conflict. So we would not be involved in the negotiation, be it with an insurance company or a sports brand or whatever, and that would not impact the fee.
Okay. Can I just ask, has there been any tightening up of policy on a client, or I suppose, so we have the editorial guidelines, but has there been any new guidance to staff, to those working within RT, with regards to their relationships with sponsors over the last number of months? I'm thinking in particular of, is there a policy with regards to use the corporate box on match days in Croke Park, in the within the Aviva Stadium? I think it'd be important to know that.
I don't think we have a corporate box. No, we don't have a
corporate entertainment, availing of corporate entertainment. That's the RT staff.
With the sponsor or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also just want to ask about the trip to Japan as well. I think it would be important that we get an itinerary of that trip as well, because I believe there's some speculation that there was a stopover on the way back from Japan. So I think we would need to get clarification on that.
Now, Deputy, if you'd like me to answer.
Please, yeah.
As it was a trip with my colleague, my head of sales, and 4 clients. We flew to Japan via Dubai and came back via Dubai. There was no stopover. And I would like to add that the value of the companies that were represented on the trip had spent 38 million across RT the previous year. So I think if I can do anything today, I would really like to put this in context of the business that we're generating with these people.
Okay, thank you. Chair, two very quick questions. On the toy show, Mr. Coveney, I get that risk is part and parcel of any arts programming, and I think certainly it did not work out as intended. I think the revenues were, 15% of what you had forecast in Q2 last year. But you talk about this being a multi-annual project. So what were your expectations for year 2 and 3 of the project? So that's question number 1. Question number 2, is the toy show still incurring costs? Is there contractual arrangements relating to the toy show that RT is still tied into?
On the second question is no. The only residual costs are the storage of the set, which is €8,000 per year, and should we decide what we're doing it. Sorry, the first question?
What did you forecast for year 2 and 3? Like, is in from the text, it assumes, you're kind of acknowledging that you could have potentially made a loss, even though you weren't forecasting for that, but you're obviously expecting to make a gain in year 2 or 3.
Yeah, the big difference in subsequent years is that the running you don't have the development costs, which are obviously considerable. So the profit margin should go up in subsequent years, assuming the revenues stay the same. So because your development costs are sunk in the first year. So as it turned out, obviously that didn't happen. So we're at the moment we're just considering what we're going to do. We haven't made any decisions. We're not doing it this year, but we're considering what we might do in the future.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Short, just final question, Chair. The external review was obviously announced yesterday. I think it's going to be probably about 8 months by the time we see something concrete from that process. What do you believe needs to happen now in the interim within RTE, firstly within the board, because I suppose you're on the board, what changes need to happen in order to try and reinstil that public confidence, or the confidence of both the staff and the public in RTE?
Well, I think there was a number of things that the board committed to doing in our original statement, which seems like a long time ago now, and obviously one of them was to bring in any future amendments or new presenting contracts under the remit of the Remuneration Committee. That's an important step to do. We've got a lot of reflection to do just on how we work on the board, and how we approach issues and how we ask questions, and we're going to take that very seriously. I know that there are many reviews going on. There's going to be important work as well, and as part of my membership of the Art Committee, we're hoping that the current Grant Thornton review is going to finish its work as soon as possible, and we intend to release as much information from that as we can. So there's an awful lot of immediate work to do, and then there's those other things about questioning ourselves about how we can work better. And then just to answer the first part of your question in terms of the review, it does seem like 8 months is a long time, but I know that there are so many issues that this whole disaster has brought up, particularly for staff, and the word culture is bandied about a lot, and to be honest, it's something that I never really understood till this all happened, and I think it's actually fundamental to repairing RTE and repairing its reputation. And I know from speaking to colleagues that they do intend to make a real contribution to that review, and they really welcome the fact that part of the review, it's not just about corporate governance, it's about how staff have been treated, how they perceive their treatment over the years, various issues that have come up time and time again, and they are looking forward to contributing to that process, and they really welcome it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.